This is Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series discussing the themes and ideas expressed in the beloved story of Babette's Feast by Danish author Karen Blixen. Throughout the series, we'll talk with artists and special topical guests discussing things such as refuge and sanctuary, the art of hospitality, the importance of cultural exchange, beauty and pleasure, and the power of living in community. What makes our podcast unique is that you'll also get an insider's look at the many artistic and production decisions that are made in putting together a theatrical production as we rehearse a new play adaptation of Babette's Feast. So sit back and settle in for a stimulating dive into deep ideas and the world of theater magic. I'm your host, Charlie. I'm here for episode 2 of our Babette's Feast podcast series, where we explore the themes and ideas expressed in the story. I'm excited for today's episode. We're going to be talking about the art of hospitality. That's right, the art of hospitality, believing that it's an art. I'm joined today by 2 guests. First off, I'm joined by ADAM BARROWS. Adam is proud to be performing in his first show for Ninth Hour Theatre Company, Babette's Feast. That's right. Adam is one of the actors in the production. Previously, he could be seen on the Gladstone stage last season as Michael Sean Hastings in Late Company, Elevator Theatre Company, and as Richard in The Lion in Winter, Phoenix Players. He also played Zach in Lost Baggage Musical Theater's recent production of A Chorus Line. He has been a professor of English literature at Carleton University since 2009. Welcome, Adam.
Great, thanks. Great to be here.
And I'm also joined by EVELYN JOST. EVELYN has been involved with Ninth Hour Theatre Company since its origins in 2009. She first helped direct and performed in the company's premiere production, Telling the Story, in 2010, followed by performing in the ensemble of Eyes Upon the Cross in 2011 at the Shankman Art Center. EVELYN then went on as assistant director for The Secret Garden, presented at the Gladstone Theatre in 2012. Since then, she's been hospitality coordinator for several productions, as well as assisting with front of house. EVELYN is currently part of the company's artistic team as costume designer for Babette's Feast. Welcome, EVELYN.
Thank you.
And I should point out that EVELYN was assistant director for The Secret Garden at the Gladstone Theatre. That was the last time Ninth Hour has been at the Gladstone Theatre. And here we are returning with Babette's Feast, which is very exciting. Yes.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. So let's dig right in, guys. Did you have any past knowledge of the story of Babette's Feast, whether the book, the short story, the movie, or anything? What about you, Adam?
No, I was and remain a huge fan of Isak Dinisen's writing. In fact, in my 20s, when I was an undergrad, I took an entire summer course. I got my undergrad at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we had a Scandinavian literature in translation department.
Oh my! And
there was a summer class on the fiction of Isak Dinisen, and I took it. So I've read every single short story that she's published, about 4 collections of short stories, and Out of Africa, which was famous for the movie.
Right.
And so, yeah, I was a huge fan. Absolutely.
Wow, so
I love her work.
You knew from the beginning then, yeah.
It's the reason I auditioned for the play, actually.
Wow.
I saw Babette's Feast, and I thought, absolutely, an adaptation of Isak Dinisen is exactly what I want to do.
Oh, I know. And it's like a 2018 adaptation, too, this play. It's very new.
It's new, yeah.
I'd first heard about Babette's Feast in a book I was reading. It was a book about faith or spirituality, and it was referring to scenes in Babette's Feast. But I hadn't heard about it before, so I just took this author's word for it. And then a friend of mine, maybe like 10 years ago or whatever, said, "Oh, have you heard about this? And you should watch it." And so I did. I watched the movie, and it was very pleasing. It wasn't in English, but there was English subtitles, and it was also, there weren't a lot of words. I just remember being like visual and a lot of action that you would notice and just take it all in.
It's a gorgeous movie from the late 80s. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And what about you, EVELYN? Did you have any experience with Babette's Feast before this production?
Yes, my sister raved about the story.
Oh.
So she always found the good books and movies. And so she told me about it in the early 90s. But I actually only watched the movie just last week.
Oh, just last week. So it's really fresh for you.
It was neat with the subtitles.
Yeah. What did you take away from the movie? Since it's so fresh on your mind. Yeah. Like, what was your favorite part, would you say? Yeah.
Well, it's so touching at the end when they can't believe, you know, her generosity and her lavish love on them. They don't feel deserving of it. Yeah, I found that so touching.
Mm-hmm. I know. I love how, like, she's like a professional cook, right, from a fancy Paris restaurant, and she decides, after living in this community for over a decade, she decides to prepare for them a lavish feast. She spends all her lottery winnings, sacrifices everything she has, in a sense, because that lottery winnings could have been used for a new life for her. And instead, she throws them this lavish feast, which is just so beautiful. And they don't even know what they're eating, or that they've lived so simply. They don't even know the exquisite nature of the different offerings and the food and the drink. But there's one guy at the table that does. Isn't that right, Adam?
Yeah, the character. Well, we all play a variety of characters. It's a truly ensemble piece. But one of the major characters that I transform into towards the end of the play is an elderly General Lowenheim, Lawrence Lowenheim, who is the only person at the table who has actually participated in fine dining, in Parisian dining, and can recognize turtle soup when he tastes it, and recognize a fine Veuve Clicquot, when he tastes it. And so he's very aware of the opulence and the sumptuousness of this feast, and sort of can't believe it's happening in these very austere, puritanical surroundings. It's sort of one of the great tensions of the text is that the tension between how she phrases it, Isak Dinisen, between righteousness and bliss, which is actually a quotation from the 84th Psalm.
Is it really?
Yeah, Psalm 84. His mercy and truth meet together, and righteousness. Although in the King James Version, it's actually righteousness and peace have kissed one another. Oh. And her translation, and maybe it was the Danish Bible, might be, or it might just be Dinisen. Dinisen translates Psalm 84 into righteousness and bliss rather than peace. So interesting, the different implications of peace versus bliss. But it's this tension between this puritanical righteousness. Right. Feeling like in order to be true to our faith, we have to not enjoy the pleasures of the flesh versus bliss, which implies an ability to enjoy pleasure. Enjoyment. Enjoyment in life and sensual pleasures.
It's not a word we use often, bliss.
Bliss.
It's not really a word that we often hear. Right. We do, I guess we hear, in my circles, I talk about joy and beauty and pleasure a lot, but it's not like most of the world does. These are not common. Even the word righteousness or honor, all these these words, right, that are found. I didn't know where that's. I'm glad you brought that up. What was it? Psalm?
It's the 84th Psalm. Okay. So she's directly citing, and that citation comes up quite a bit in the play. Mercy and truth will meet, righteousness and bliss will kiss. It's right from the end of the 84th Psalm. You
could say righteousness and bliss connecting. There's that almost defines hospitality. There is a righteousness to being hospitable, to giving to others, especially when you get nothing in return or expect nothing in return. And boy, is there bliss, because everyone's enjoying the company and enjoying the food. And speaking of hospitality, that's why we're here. What would you say, Evelyn? How would you define hospitality? Like, if you had to describe it, what does it mean to you? Like, how would you define hospitality and how it's lived out?
Yeah, I do take a lot of time to plan meals and look up recipes, and I don't create like Babette did, but I follow a lot of different recipes, and I love the variety. But it does take a generous heart. Like, it's a sacrifice to stay home and prepare what you think your guests will like and love. And so it's a people-pleasing thing. And it's It is a generous heart that you want to give. You want them to, open up and be at home and be pleased with what you've prepared. And it's true, it's always so lovely to be in a home and to know that, it's ready for you.
And I've known you a long time, and I know for a fact that you're someone that practices that, and I see the joy that it gives you. And I'm curious. So in addition to like feeding or providing like a warm place or a cozy meal, do you feel something else is going on in the room? Like it's one thing to just have a good meal, but is there something else happening in someone preparing a meal for somebody and someone eating it and enjoying it? What do you think else is going on there?
Well, I think they feel the love behind it. And when we feel loved, I think we open up and we share more. And it's just a beautiful atmosphere, right? Conducive to sharing and just intimacy together, So I think it takes the preparation. And then, sometimes you don't have time, like when our friends came with their 8 of 13 children.
Whoa. And they just dropped on in with no warning?
Yeah, so I grabbed some muffins from the freezer and cut some cheese and, just all the craziness. And actually right now, I usually do a big Sunday dinner for my family. And I've got 2 sons in the city with their wives and 4 kids each. And
okay.
One in Toronto with his 4 kids and wife. And anyway,
so three of your kids each have 4 kids?
Yeah, 12 grandchildren.
Wow.
12 little darlings.
Wow.
But anyway, so I was preparing and we were eating 2 Sundays ago and or I had called them to eat and my oven broke. And actually it's still it's a complicated story, but I have not had an oven for 10 days.
This is a crisis of hospitality.
Because I was going to make something for one of the families, and I thought, I don't have an oven. I guess I'll bring some fruit,
Oh, that's hard. That's interesting.
It's never happened before. So
wow, that's like something you use a lot. So it's like suddenly you're like you feel like you have one limb taken away or something. Wow. I like what you said, Evelyn. Like, it's so beautiful. I know for me, especially when I was younger, but it still remains true today. I was invited into many people's homes, when I was young and just part of their family and treat it like I was part of their family and given a nice meal. And you do feel love and you do tend to open up. In other words, you might not open up vulnerably in like a big church setting or something like that. But in someone's home, I don't know, suddenly there's like a safety in the delicious food.
Which is what happens in the climax to the play, to the story, is people open up and in ways that they didn't even think they were capable of in the presence of all the glow of the hospitality that Babette gives. I want to, if you don't mind, if it's not too pedantic, I want to think about, the root of the word hospitality, right?
Because interesting.
We often think about
English
hosting.
Professor right here.
Right. I'm going to be academic, I suppose.
I love it, Adam.
But if you think about hosting, we usually think we're hosting our friends and family, right? But the word comes from the Greek word hospice. So in Latin, there are 2 different words for stranger. One of them is hospice, which where hospitality comes from.
Stranger. In Latin is hospice.
Another way to say stranger is hostis, stranger, which is the root for the word hostility.
Oh,
right? Because
what about
hospice?
What about hostess? Host.
I think host comes actually from hostis.
Really?
Hospitality and hospitals come from hospice. Hospice means stranger with a connotation of guest.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And hostis means stranger with a connotation of foreigner or enemy.
Interesting.
That's why if you're hospitable to a stranger who is a guest,
right,
and you're hostile to a stranger who is an enemy,
okay,
right? And so it's interesting that these are 2 different ways of thinking of strangers. And because what happens in the play, right, in the story, is the hospitality is not just extended to friends and family. It's from an immigrant to strangers, right? And so it crosses that linguistic boundary between hospitality to a stranger who is a friend or a guest and hostility to a stranger who's a foreigner, right?
Whoa.
So I think it's really interesting if you think about that. And it's possible to think about hospitality as a kind of powerful dynamic, right? You need it. I have it to provide. If you're thinking about immigrants who need to come to a strange new land and look for a place to be brought into and hosted, right? There's a way to do that in which you think of it as a kind of finite resource, right? And you're seeing this, I hate to be too political, but south of the border, and any kind of country that's clamping down on keeping out foreigners, they're treating those strangers with hostility rather than hospitality. It's a deviation in the way you think of strangers.
So
this is a place where an immigrant who speaks a different language comes to a small town, and it is a situation of hospitality, hospice rather than hostility.
And she didn't know what she's going to expect there.
Absolutely not.
And that's so interesting to parse that out, because it's like, there's two ways to treat someone at your door, right?
That's
they're
right.
a threat or they're a guest,
That's right.
basically.
And why do they become a threat? I mean, it has to do, I think, with thinking about your ability to host as a finite resource. There's a lot of meditation. I give this big speech as the general at the end of the play about grace being either finite or infinite. And if grace is infinite, then there's hospitality is circular. It's infinitely renewable. I host you, you host me. It returns upon itself. It energizes through circulating. Whereas if you think about hosting as a linear thing, I have this limited amount of ability to accommodate a limited amount of people. You are a drain now on my resources. It's got to stop. It's sort of a one-way street that's linear. I think that Dinisen is really, even if she didn't know that difference in the Latin root, she's playing around with these ideas of thinking, is hospitality an infinitely renewable resource? Or is it something that's scarce in the world? I mean, this is a profound question.
Yeah, and even though the meal's over and they've eaten up all the food and the money's been spent, so in that sense, it's
finite.
Hospitality is a finite resource. Your oven being broken, and so it's a resource that's finite. And you only have so much space in your house. Of course, that's fine. If so, but I love this idea that it goes in circular and it's reversible and it's paid forward and it's
paid forward.
Yeah, I always like to think that things like grace, I never thought about it in terms of hospitality, but certainly grace, love, and like freedom, for example, as concepts, as ideas. I've always thought those to be infinite and but even those, we act as if there's some shortage. There's only so much love to go around.
There's only so much freedom in the world.
There's so much freedom. Like, I have to limit your freedom to have my freedom, and vice versa. But I don't believe that inherently. And beauty too. Beauty's another one. It's like there's no limit to the beauty and stuff. I love that. The hospitality is hospitality
potentially infinite?
What do you think, Evelyn?
Well, it just reminds me of when we had these people from Czech Republic, and they were refugees. They were fleeing, and we had them over. It was so neat, and that's when I said, "Oh, you can take my electric frying pan and kettle," like they had nothing, And it was so neat to be able to help them.
It felt good to do it, right? And to see, I had an experience one time when I was young, perhaps slightly naive too. I ended up, I was at a church, part of a church, and I befriended someone that was on the streets, and they were kind of like the same age as me too. So you're like, oh no, I could be you, right? And I remember just really feeling for this person. And again, I was really young and maybe naive as well. But I did give them a lot, not a lot of my belongings, but I had 2 blankets. So I gave them one. I had 2 lamps. I gave them one because they had finally found an apartment and they didn't have anything. And without going into detail, that it didn't end well, needless to say. And, that friendship didn't last. And then they got kicked out of the place about a month later. So it felt like a waste of giving, but I know now with more maturity that it's never a waste of giving. And there's this verse in the Bible. I can't remember where it's found, but it's like, don't don't forget to show hospitality to strangers, lest they be angels that you're unaware of. Like they could be angels. They could be. I mean, there's another passage to the cup of water you gave that person you were really giving to Christ, or these different passages. So it's like showing hospitality to a stranger is important, but I get a deep impression we're losing that a bit as a society, especially in cities. It's hard to reach out to the stranger. It's actually kind of scary often, you know, I find, and you just don't know the kind of reaction you're going to get. So it's hard to just invite strangers over. It's one thing to invite your neighbors over, but even that can be hard.
Then.
Like, did you grow up with any experiences of hospitality?
I did. Well, I can tell a little bit of a story. So I was an actor when I was younger, and I grew up in Minnesota, and I did one summer I did Minnesota Summer Stock Theater. And so we all left the big city in Minneapolis and went down this little tiny rural town, southern Minnesota. And they had a little theater, and they did plays all summer for the community. And so, it was one of those, repertoire theater. You'd be rehearsing two different shows. Right. So I was down there. I was
like
playing
a destination theater, like where people from the city would purposely go there to watch theater.
It really was just giving it to most of the audience was mostly all the local community. People would come from the rural communities, but the actors usually all came from the Twin Cities. And so I was playing Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream and Ralph in A Sound of Music, right? It was a great set of shows. But I was maybe 15 going on 16, and the actors were all put up for the entire summer in the community members' houses. So there's this nice older couple, they may be in their early 60s, they had grown kids who'd already moved away, and I stayed with them and ate meals with them and slept in one of the kids' bedrooms, and I watched the Jay Leno show with them every night like I was their son. I felt like their son for that whole summer. And it was, at the time, I just thought, you think, well, this is just how it is. This is what happens. This is what you do when you're an actor and you go. And it's only later that I realized just how unbelievably generous. And every single one of us was being posted in a different house in this community. They valued actors coming down and giving their time to put on these shows for their community. At the same time, I was interviewed by the local rural paper by this girl about my age. And we started becoming friends, very innocent, walk around and talk and take walks in the park. But her mother, I forget what sect she was, but she was, something like a very strict Jehovah's Witness or something like that. And she forbade her daughter from having anything to do with this actor from the cities because he was going to corrupt her and he wasn't part of the local community. And she came and told me this and said, I can't see. Mom says I can't see you anymore because you're this strange actor.
You're like,
and she said, but I'm not. I'm going to defy her. And anyway, and so I felt like here I am, this stranger who's being sort of caught in this battle over a hostility towards foreignness at the same time as this lovely couple is treating me like their son. So it was like, in the same community, I had two very different experiences.
Right, and it's going back to these words, the words you were talking about.
It was the hospitality here and the hostility on the, right in that same summer.
Wow, that is definitely that's a new one, but I totally get it. That's just like, oh, you can't see him. I can't see you anymore.
But it was funny
because you're an actor.
He's an actor. That's right, a traveling player. The lowest of the low.
My gosh,
some itinerant.
But people do I do find I relate so much to the play because I've definitely met over the years people in religious communities that do have a bit of that mentality, when it comes to dancing or theater or film, and there's a bit of a fear because you don't know, it might make you feel something, or it might make you question something, and of course that's why we love it, right? But there is that, and even in Babette's feast, this idea of the foreign food coming in, and what's it going to do to us? It's going to corrupt us. It's going to corrupt us, but of course it doesn't corrupt them, and it's just this beautiful enjoyment of life. But and what about you, Evelyn? Did you I already know the answer to this because I know you, but what was did you grow up with experiences of hospitality?
Oh yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah, my mom, my parents were very open-hearted. They had many people over, and actually the Cambodians had come to have their church at my church. And we crossed paths, and that was so neat. So my parents, always reached out, always had a a roast or turkey or something on.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would be in the kitchen washing dishes because, and listening quietly to the conversations. It was all so interesting. So, yeah. So they did that. And then, of course, I grew up with scriptures. So, you know, it's always reaching out to the stranger and the widow and the foreigner. And yeah.
It was like a way of life, it sounds like, for your family. Like, it's just just they're always prepared to have someone over. They're always expecting that would be the case.
Oh, yes, they were. Mom with her fondue, which I'm sure you
I've had it. I believe I've had that fondue. Yes. And I think it's my first time ever having fondue. So I was like, what is this? But it was so good because I love cheese, of course.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But I also thought, you know, back to Babette.
Yeah.
When she came as this kind of forlorn person, I know she had been up high as a chef and all that. But when she came with, you know, her husband and the death of her husband, the death of her son, and she's just kind of begging them to take her in this more repressed community.
Right.
And I just thought, wow, you know, to have that generous heart that she had, she really had to lay aside any bitterness about the war she had gone through. She had to really give it up and, you know, I guess offer forgiveness because she had such a loving heart again, you know, towards these people. And of course, she was so grateful that they had taken her in when she was so forlorn. But I thought, yeah, she really had to lay aside bitterness to have that generous spirit.
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way, right? Like to be brimming over with generosity or hospitality to the point where it's kind of feeling like it's infinite. You could, you know, like that's, I think, like where you were touching upon too. Like, yeah, you really would have to get rid of these other things inside you because like, I related to, I think it was you, Adam, saying like, it was like, you know, you feel like, you only have so much to give. And it's anytime I've hosted, like it is a lot of work and sometimes you're not in the mood, but you've already, the invites are out, people are coming, but that day, maybe you're just not in the mood or maybe you're having a bad day, but people are coming and you kind of like sigh and like pick yourself up and get ready for the guests. And by the time they come, you forget about your woes and you're just enjoying yourself immensely because these are your friends or whatever. But then after they leave, there's such a mess and it's a lot of dishes and you think, oh boy, I don't know if I could do this every day, let alone every week or even every month, but it's always just worth it. And I just encourage everyone to practice that. You know, we've been through a bit of a time in our society where maybe we've lost having people over and you know, having like, it's a very nice way to build community and friendship and have people feel loved and that they have someone to talk to. And it's just wonderful. I've received it so much, I think, which is why I want to be able to do it now. Because I do have a place now where I can host, but I used to have just like a bedroom, like in someone's house. So you don't have that ability to sort of host, which is a part of hospitality, but it's not everything, is it? Because you can still be hospitable, don't you believe, without sort of like a physical location to practice it. Like you can be hospitable in your spirit or providing space for people in the community to, I don't know, to be welcome.
I mean, you're talking about the feeling of love when you're hosting and being hosted well. And so presumably that doesn't require anything material.
Right.
I mean, really, ultimately, does it?
It doesn't require the winnings of a lottery like Babette, right? Or a giant mansion, you know, like, I'm going to move into that big giant mansion. There's a garden out back so I can host. And I guess I question how much with the person with that intent, I guess, do they follow through and actually host? And I don't know the answer to it.
But it is interesting to think that it would be nice to think that people, when they come into what some would consider a luxurious space or lottery winnings or a bounty, the first thought would be, how can I spread this around? How can I share this? Instead of, oh, great, I made it. There's only so much. It's for me. I earned it.
Right.
It's for me. It's not for anyone else.
And it's finite, and therefore I got to guard it. And I only have so much, food. I only have so much income. All these things. And I love your story, Evelyn, of like, you didn't have anything, so you're taking things out of the freezer and cutting up some cheese. You can never go wrong with crackers and cheese.
Oh, no.
That's right. Well, and another story was I invited these older couples from my church and, set my oven to come on. Well, my roast was not cooked. It did not come on. And so I whipped together these spinach crepes.
Oh, yeah.
And they were really good.
Yummy.
And anyway, so that happened. And another time was in our apartment. We had just got married and we moved to Kelowna, BC. And so we had a little apartment. And I thought, I have to have people over for Thanksgiving. But we didn't have a table. So we just had a coffee table. So everything was everywhere from that meal. And I just had, a lot of young people and different ones over. And so our little apartment was filled. But
I love that.
It was so fun.
You're making do, right? You're like, you want to have people over. You don't have a table. I know a lot of people that, unless the circumstances are perfect, they're not having anyone over. Like, I love the idea of like, we got nothing, but like, bring it on, bring on the guests,
Or just keep the simplicity. I know there was a couple in our church that would have different ones over every Sunday and they would serve hot dogs because it was not stressful and that's what they did. I probably couldn't do that, but it's really cool. Yeah,
I love a good hot dog.
Yeah. Sometimes simple is great, like spontaneous, simple. It can be so lovely, right? This is all I have in my fridge. As you can see, it's empty, but wonderful, right? Like you never know.
And even if you don't have space, like I have brought so many meals on picnics. So you're just in the out of doors and enjoying, different things.
Adam, you told me you discovered something, a paper, perhaps?
Oh, I did. I mean, actually, I did not come to this podcast, this discussion, knowing about the different roots and how hospice and hospitality. I found when I was getting ready for this conversation that a Harvard master's student, Kara Kennedy, just 2 years ago, defended a master's thesis at Harvard in the religion program with a thesis that was called Christian Hospitality and Isak Dinisen's Babette's Feast. Wow. So I learned a lot from that. I can't summarize it all, but certainly one of the things I did learn was this distinction between hospice and hospice. Actually, the French philosopher Jacques Derrida was one of the first to make point out that slippage between hospice and hostis, and how hospitality could easily slide into hostility.
Right.
So I did learn that, and she talks also too about the circularity and the superabundance. I think is what she says is Christian hospitality superabundant, and what would that mean to think of it not as being a scarce and precious resource? So a lot of the things I've been talking about today were very much informed by this wonderful, actually really wonderful thesis that I read. It's not available online, but if you have access to a university library, you can get it through ProQuest dissertation. It's really beautiful. I'd love to meet the author. Really beautiful piece of work.
Really? That's I'm going to have to...
Wonderful.
You're going to have to send me that.
I will.
Or send me the author's name at least or something, because no, that's fascinating. Why was there focus on Christian hospitality specifically and not hospitality
her
generally?
Acknowledgement gave thanks to Jesus Christ. So I mean, it was very much this was a student clearly who's very personal.
Okay, gotcha.
About her personal Christian faith. So it was that's shown through at every moment.
Okay.
That she was mostly, exclusively really interested in exploring her own faith, which was Christian.
Wow.
And thinking about how hospitality works specifically in a Christian way.
Do you remember some of the insights she had about Babette's Feast, the story specifically, and how it relates to hospitality?
I'd have to think of exact textual examples. I sort of speed read the thing, which if you're ever going to get a PhD, learning how to speed read is very valuable.
Were we talking about that? Was it you that I was talking with the other day?
I think we were.
Like I'm a slow reader. I digest it. I reread the paragraph.
Is beautiful and luxurious and wonderful. But if you're getting a PhD and they say read these 100 books in 5 months, it's like, nope, you learn how to speed. I'd have to think about exact textual examples, but certainly the general speech is discussed.
Okay.
Because he does talk about the difference between finite grace and infinite grace.
Which is the character you play.
The character whose monologue I do at the end. And that is a really profound question. I mean, in order to perform that monologue at the end of the play, I've been walking around town meditating on that, almost like a Zen koan, I mean, so one hand clapping. How can grace be infinite? How can it be infinite? It is an interesting thing to think about. And what does it mean? How does our dynamic with each other change if we realize that we're not dealing with a finite, exhaustible resource, but something that is, at least in theory, infinite and circulates? And in circulating, I'm thinking about, this is my example, not Sarah Kennedy's, but I'm thinking about the body and metabolic processes in the body, right? I've been thinking about this, is there are metabolic processes in the body that are just circular. They just repeat. Like the citric acid cycle is how our body gets energy from oxygen. How we breathe in oxygen, our cells break it down and turn it into energy. That is a circular, inexhaustible process. That is just, the citric acid cycle just goes on and on and on. But it's not an empty cycle. Out of that circularity, we get energy, the energy that we pour into the universe that makes everything, right? And then there are other processes, metabolic processes, that are decidedly linear, like blood clotting. You don't want blood clotting to be a circular process. No. You want your blood to clot and then stop. You don't want it to, thin again. And you think about it, but both of those are life-saving. Without oxygen, you die. Without blood clotting, you die. So linear processes in the body are important, and circular processes are important. So I'm thinking, and not just in our human bodies,
ecology,
but sort of the ecosystem that we live in. Yeah, exactly.
Trees need carbon dioxide.
That's right.
They use it as a resource, whereas we expel it. I find that's crazy.
That's right.
One said trees need us, and we need trees.
That's right. And so in Psalm 85, the quote is actually the righteousness in King James, the righteousness and peace shall meet. The exact quote is, righteousness will reach down from heaven and peace will reach up to meet it. So it's sort of the universe is reaching out to us and we're reaching out to it as well.
Wow.
Right? There's an old Christian song, reach out to Jesus. He's reaching out for you. Oh, wow. It's that same kind of idea that these processes will kind of bring us together in a larger ecosystem. These are profound ideas.
They are.
I mean, they're not. So,
and to just tap, the concept of it's there. You need to tap into it. Yeah. You need to pull from it.
You need to. It's the air you breathe.
Yeah.
But you can put up walls. You can go get in a bubble where you don't have access to that fresh air anymore. And we were talking about hospitality turning into hostility, and the stranger who's a guest becoming the stranger who's an enemy, the stranger who is a visitor becoming the stranger who's a foreigner with all the connotations of the foreign. Right.
Like a guest that stayed too long, and now you're like, you really need them to get out of your house, but now you're starting to get hostile inside at how long they've stayed. I'm just kidding, but
these are tensions, and it sounds like, oh yes, we can say my grace is infinite, but is it? Of course it's not. These are ideals that I certainly can't live up to.
No, me neither.
Right.
And it's interesting, because if when people talk about God's grace, right, and it's often a lot of people do believe, right, that it's infinite. There's no what's the word I'm looking for? There's no barriers to it, it's offered freely, that it's infinite. There's nothing it doesn't cover, and of course the argument against that often is, well, that means you can do anything you want with your life and God's just gonna forgive. That's I suppose that's true, but if you are experiencing the grace for real and not just sort of thinking about it as an academic idea, but you've experienced it or received it, would you want to carry on doing whatever the heck you want, or would there be some sort of circular giving of grace back to the world and to others because you've experienced such profound grace? That's how I like to look at it. Of course you can go out and hurt people, but perhaps the question then is, well, did you ever experience that grace then? Or did you just claim to or say that you did, right? Right. So, I mean, some of the characters in the play, during the meal, right, Adam, they are forgiving one another for petty spats that they had. What are some of the little things that they say during the meal while the general is going on this big beautiful speech about grace.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's sort of like broken up by some other characters or they say things afterwards. Like, what are some of the things that they're saying?
Yeah,
Like,
well, there's one line. He says, "You cheated me when you sold me that timber." And he says, "Yep, I did. You're right. You got me." And they forgive each other for these sort of petty, not petty. I mean, to be cheated in a financial transaction is not a petty thing.
no, certainly
I
not.
mean, wars have started over less
Yes,
in
yes.
the world.
So they're because like what happened in this community is their main leader died years ago, and they start their grace for one another, I suppose, started to unravel maybe, and they started to hold these grudges, and then the sisters that Babette's living with are trying to hold the fort together with glue, so to speak, and perhaps not succeeding in keeping the community together and unified and loving and forgiving towards one another. But then this meal comes in, and Babette is the stranger. Babette's the one originally a stranger and now part of their community, and like her decision to spend her winnings on this feast, treating them of that, it opens them up. And I want to hover on this moment in the story, right? Because it's like, I look forward to seeing the production, Adam, because like, I just look forward for this moment of transformation, this moment of like, transcendent beauty, like taking over the room as they take in the meal, and they don't even know what they're eating. And yet something's going on, like lights filling the room or lights filling their souls, and I just find that so beautiful. Can you read some of the speech that you have?
I can.
Maybe not all of it, but yeah.
There is a bit
treat us to it.
Where he says the room is filled with heavenly light, as if a number of small halos had blended into one glorious radiance. Oh, that's a very neat line.
So profound.
And the general says, he says. We've all of us been told that grace is to be found in the universe, but in our human foolishness, we imagine divine grace to be finite. For this reason, we tremble. We tremble before making our choice in life, and after having made it, again tremble in fear of having chosen wrong. But the moment comes when our eyes are opened and we see that grace is infinite. It demands nothing from us but that we await it with confidence and acknowledge it in gratitude. It makes no conditions. It singles out none of us in particular. It takes us all to its bosom. And then he says, that which we have chosen is given us, and that which we have refused is at the same time granted us, and that which we have rejected is poured upon us abundantly. This is a really interesting idea. Which we have
rejected
is poured upon us abundantly, because the general on a personal level is as an older man is torn with regret over a kind of sliding doors moment that he had as a young man, when he might have actually married the eldest daughter of the dean of this community, and stayed in this community. Right. And instead he rejects it. It's too much pressure, and he goes off and lives this worldly cosmopolitan life of great fame and glory. But there's a part of him that always worries, did he make the wrong choice? So it's an interesting moment. That's a really profound idea to say it doesn't matter if we chose so-called incorrectly, because it's all given to us. It's all given to us anyway. That you can see why I've been walking around town pondering this monologue, because these are real profundities. How can what you've rejected be given to you? Isn't that a conundrum? Isn't that a paradox?
Right. You mean this idea that, the decisions we made when we're younger, they set us on a path, and living in regret as if you've missed out on something, perhaps that's not the way to look at it, because it's always there and offered. Yeah, there was no fork in the road
there was no fork in the road
that made you go down the path too far.
The fork in the road was a misconception. And again, I think of, I don't know if you like my metabolic metaphor. But I'm thinking of in terms of the general thinking that he's on this blood clot path. The blood clotted. That's it. I survived. But what else could happen? Instead, he was involved more in an oxygen cycle, right? Where, yes, he in one sense has refused to marry Martine, but she's also always been there. And he says to her, I have been with you every day, even though we've never seen each other. Whoa. And he has. In the sense that we've all been with each other always, all the time. These are extraordinarily profound ideas.
Whoa, what do you think, Evelyn, about all this? Yeah, that it is profound,
Yeah.
You are listening to Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. We'll return in a moment with the rest of our discussion.
Ninth Hour Theater Company presents Beauty Will Save the World, a brand new musical audio drama for the whole family. Embark on a seafaring adventure and thought-provoking cautionary tale about the importance of passing on beauty to the younger generation, where relationships once lost are found again, when tested to choose what they stand for and who they will stand with.
Beauty will save the world! I felt it! I've lived it!
Laughter, action, and tears, reminding us about the sacred things that make life worth living. To listen to full episodes or exclusive behind-the-scenes content, go to beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
I want to more than just survive. I want to hope and feel alive. I want
Beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
And now, back to the discussion.
Whoa, what do you think, Evelyn, about all this? Yeah, that it is profound. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just think God's grace is lavish, and but we have to choose to take it, right?
Yeah.
God loved the whole world and sent his son. And, you know, that even when Jesus was born, it's like peace, goodwill toward men. And so I think we have a free will, and we have to accept or reject. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty heavy stuff, to think about. My goodness.
And to say it as an actor, I mean, because an actor, at least the way I believe in acting, I'm sort of a Stanislavskian. You know, I have to really feel it and believe it and live it in order to say it convincingly. So
is that true? Like
to
for
me,
you?
For me, that's kind of how I was trained. So to me, to say a speech that mostly sounds like big abstract ideas that are almost incomprehensible, to make that real and meaningful and express emotion and pain, it's a great acting challenge.
I'm glad.
The main reason I took the role is
I'm
I saw
glad.
that speech and I thought, that's going to require an actor there.
Whoa, Adam. I'm so glad you're in that role. That's like, because it's too easy as an actor. We've all acted at some point in our life here, the three of us. Like, it's too easy, I think, to get obsessed with the technical aspects, where you're going, what are you doing, what the words are. And it's very easy to neglect what the words mean. Yeah. But also like, what is it? What's implied here? And how do you own these words and understand
That's
them?
right. Own them.
You know, because I'm sure we've all seen plays or movies where I don't know, you can tell perhaps there's a lack of preparation going on. You can just tell the profound words being said that the actor sadly doesn't know what it means at all. It hasn't really.
And we've been to sermons.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Where the homily just feels like a lot of big abstract words.
That's right.
And we've been to ones where you can tell the pastor is expressing something deep and heartfelt that has kept them up nights pondering on the mysteries. I mean, we all know the difference between when we hear one of those sermons and we hear a sermon that's just a lot of big empty words that are too abstract for us to grasp.
Totally. So you can tell when it's coming from the person versus a regregurtation or a reproduction of someone else's words, but you don't understand the meaning of it.
That literally then becomes a platitude. Right? And Stanislavski, as an acting teacher, it warns us all as actors against just spouting cliches and platitudes. And I think the same would apply to a good priest, a good pastor, a good minister.
I think you're right. So I'm just trying to picture you like walking around the city, like with the words of the play, like in your head or in front of you. And I could just picture you because I know you now. I could just picture you like really getting into it, sitting on a rock, looking out over the Rideau River or the Ottawa River. I could just picture you like contemplating it. That's so lovely.
I think it's what the part demands. I think it is what the part demands. Yeah.
I think so too. It's because that moment in the story is quite like without the feast. Why is the story called Babette's Feast? But also that moment brings everything together really wonderfully, I think, as well. Is that in the movie as well, Evelyn? That moment where there's a general character and he's expressing this beautiful speech. Is it?
Yes, it is. And I just thought how, they had their petty differences and quarrels and resentments. And, they were looking within them and, they weren't seeing, higher ground, and Babette's perspective kind of drew them out to see that. And it's beautiful. It's like they reflected her love and generosity, and they could extend it to each other. So it must have been very freeing for them, because she had freed them up by her example, her sacrificial love. And it's a beautiful thing.
I love that idea too, right? Of like someone could set the example, and you can let it influence you. And I want to be like that. I want to do that for others. I want to be like that. Or you can kind of reject the example. And because, like hospitality does there is a sacrifice, because it's a sacrifice of time or energy, especially if you're not feeling it, right? Like, so you don't always want people in your house, strangers in your house and stuff. But like there's work involved, because you can't host, whether it be hosting a meal or hosting a meeting, literally just hosting a business meeting or directing a play, whatever it is. It's hard if you've got nothing to give, like, because people are looking to you, right, for direction, or they're looking to you to set the tone of the culture of that moment or that room, whether it be in a room with all the other actors and the director, whether it be at a meal, what are the rules that we have to follow, and like someone's setting that tone. And so there's this part of hospitality that it's not even about anything material whatsoever. It's this spirit setting trend. It's this culture setting trend, I feel, right? Where you're setting like, oh, I know if I go to EVELYN's house, there's like warmth and joy there. Like you're sort of like creating an environment that lasts beyond the meal and the time that you spend there. Like I know people had said that about my place a couple of years ago, that they felt like, because I host basically wine and cheese discussions, like kind of like what we're having now, but with wine and cheese or whatever. And it's such a common occurrence for a lot of people who come to my place for that. And they sort of, when they come, it's like the tone has been set that this room is for discussion about ideas and not frivolous, superficial things. Like you just happen to, as soon as you get in the room, want to talk about deeper things. So I don't know. There's something about that, right? Where that you could set like a culture in a space. Even you can set a precedent of hospitality in a space.
I'm glad you mentioned directing a play, because what are you doing with Ninth Hour Theater and putting on this play? I mean, we're not doing this to make insane profits. In fact, we should probably talk about the donations that are happening materially as a result of this production. But I would say, even if they weren't, even if we weren't donating to institutions and charities and organizations, just the work of producing local theater is a tremendous gift to hospitality. We're rehearsing this, 12 hours a week, and giving up our evenings to do this, to put this on for people so they can come and experience a little of that glow as well. What are we doing at the Gladstone, in a month or so, if not attempting to host something beautiful and loving and wonderful? That's what you guys are doing. That's what we're all doing.
Yes, indeed, Adam. So glad you brought that up, and that's so encouraging to hear, because like you said, there's not hordes of money in it, that's for sure. And so there is sacrifice in it all, and for all of us that are involved, for anyone who's involved in in art or in some community initiative. And again, like I love, and with this production, we're gonna, on top of it, in the spirit of Babette's feast and generosity and hospitality, we are gonna raise money through tipping the show that for other local charities that relieve poverty and feed people, food bank, and another program that brings people in from the cold in the coldest months of the year here in Canada and or Wisconsin, I'm sure as well. And so and it's like, but it's like this belief that art can include more than those that are just there in the room. And you're creating, isn't that great about theater too? Like if you're there in the room, it's you're live and you get to you're part of an experience, and nothing about theater materially lasts, which is an interesting art form. Like all you have to show for yourself after are the are the photos, and them in themselves are not necessarily material either. And then you have maybe like the used costumes, the sweaty costumes, and the set pieces that are no longer of any use because the show's over. So these things are no longer of any practical use, but they were of immense use during the show. But what does last about theater is what it did, like what it did in the room, and what people experienced in the community and the friendships. And I think that's so true about Babette's feast, although it is a finite meal, a feast with finite resources. What happens in the room lasts forever with infinite possibilities, right?
And with the movie, she doesn't even enter the room. She has this boy serving the table and the guests and telling him to fill up the general's cup with the wine that he loves. And here she is working in the kitchen because it's so much work and preparing these beautiful delicacies.
So she's not even partaking with them, huh?
And in fact, it's a surprise in the play as well. It is a surprise to her that the general's coming at the last minute. So she was fully prepared to do this, knowing that no one was even going to be able to appreciate the cost. They would think this is nice, but what's the difference between this and a $5 plate of cod soup and a little bit of dry bread?
Whoa!
It's an pure accident at the last minute. In fact, she says we better bring out an extra sofa now that the general's. So she did not. She went into this fully planning that no one at that table would have been able to say. Absolutely. Do you know what an artist is serving you right now? Somebody, a decorated culinary genius. She did not expect accolades or praise or thanks or acknowledgement.
They do call her an artist too, don't they?
Yeah, well, the general does. He says he's the great culinary artist of her age.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's why, calling this episode The Art of Hospitality felt so fitting and so right. That's such an interesting point you make though. Like, she did all this effort. And that could happen to any of us in our lives too, right? Like, you go through such effort behind the scenes. Maybe people just don't quite realize. A theater production is a very good example of what goes into it. The amount of labor.
Sometimes you don't get the audiences, and you're playing to a house of 10 or 15 people.
Oh, I know.
But it could be magical for those 10 or 15 people.
And it's so crazy when, like, if you do put all the effort in, and she was going to do it anyway, and they wouldn't have known what they were eating, and you could have that with anything related to hospitality. Like, you wouldn't, unless you know, they just served me the rarest food ever. If you didn't know that, you're just like, oh, this is interesting, and I definitely had a couple experiences like that where I could tell someone was serving me something that is supposed to be fancy, but I didn't know what it was. So I'm learning that I should be more impressed. You've ever had that feeling where it's like, you're in the moment, you're adapting socially to be like, oh, I should be impressed here, actually, right? And you get the background story of it. And
well, doesn't she turn every meal into a love affair?
That's right.
Oh, right. That's the quote.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that quote. Yeah. I love that quote. Yeah. You must have had that. You must relate, right, Evelyn, where you've had lots of people over, whatever, and you're so busy, right? Like getting the food ready or serving that you're not even able to participate in the conversation as much as you would like, or enjoy the company as much as you would like. Is that true? Or
listen to all the grandchildren and what they have to tell me and show me. So I make up for it after. But I know one is preoccupied with, getting a meal on time. And I mean, I had a very lovely partner who my husband died 4.5 years ago, and he did appreciate my food.
Did he?
Was always very verbal, and my kids are good too. So I am blessed.
Like they made sure you knew, right, that they were enjoying it. Yeah. Oh, it's so important to do, isn't it? Like, it's like so easy to take things for granted and people's efforts for granted. And,
it was like I said about that couple that put me up at their house. At the time, I just thought, well, this is just how it's done. Of course this happened.
Right.
It's only now looking back at it in my early 50s and thinking, well, I don't know that I would have done that.
Right.
Just put up some teenage actor in my house for an entire summer. An actor, let alone.
They're going to corrupt the village. The village daughters are going to be corrupted by this actor from the city.
You can see that this community had been, this theater had been there a long time. They've been doing this for decades, and that was only true because there were enough people in that community who valued theater so much that they literally threw open their doors to welcome strangers in, so they could perform for them.
Wow, wow, yeah. That's I've known people who definitely went out of their way to help refugees in similar manners in our country. So. Yeah, it's beautiful when like that people feel they're in that position to be able to do things and they do, you know. So it's wonderful to hear, you know, like no, it's so like it's I'm just thinking still about like the difference between like once the general arrived, it's now higher stakes because he does know what the good food would be, and boy, is he appreciating it. Yeah. And is she there? Is she in this little village because of the general? And he like
she's in the village because of Ashil Papani, a great opera singer.
Oh, the opera singer. Okay.
Who also appreciates what a great artist of a chef she is.
Okay.
And so it's a French opera singer who makes the recommendation to her that she come.
I see.
And he had visited the town and had been a rejected lover of one of the dean's daughters as well.
I see.
So there are people who know, and in a way, I mean, it's you'd have to talk to the actor playing Pepin. I haven't thought about it from his, I'm really thinking about my character, but he's rejected by this community. And yet he gives them this tremendous gift that he knows the value of. He could have told Babette after her husband and son were killed in the commune in the 1870s revolution. He could have told her to go anywhere. And he said, go to this little town. You know, they're good people there.
Is that what he said?
He says these are good people,
even though he was kind of rejected.
He had been rejected by them. Yeah,
and was he rejected with hostility or sort of apathy, more so? Or, you know, what I mean?
That's complicated.
Yeah, okay.
He stirs things in the younger daughter that she's not ready to accept,
like the young actor in the small town. Oh, that's interesting.
This stirs up feelings that we don't want to deal with. It's funny to think of 16-year-old me that way. Because I was I hadn't even had a girlfriend by that point in my life. I was very naive and innocent.
Right.
We never even held hands.
Right.
All we did was walk around and talk to each other. So the fact that it was so just the idea of that was so threatening.
Her mom's imagining
in fact, she said she went and talked to the church elders about this relationship. And the church elders. So it was a big scandal in this community for a while.
There was no scandal, and that's what's so amusing about it. There was
no scandal.
And that's why this play's funny too, right? Because everything. Like even the turtle soup, like everything, all these like little.
They're so worried it's going to be a witch's Sabbath because there's a cauldron of bubbling turtles. You know.
Well, that father, he was pretty selfish. Their father, to not let them get married and not encourage that.
Yeah, that's right. Interesting.
Oh my goodness! Right. I know he knew his Bible, but
that's right. And he's an honored figure. But if you think about it, the fact that after his death, the community is at a complete loss. That's a failure on his part too, because you should never have people depending on you, right, for your halo. To bask in the glow of your halo. It's like the image at the end of the play is all our little halos combine to form a stronger light. So I mean, the dean, I think, is a problematic figure to a certain extent.
No, that's interesting too. Yeah,
because we can't live without him. What a community shouldn't have a leader that it can't live without.
No, like that's a failing on his part for sure. And it's fascinating, right? Like they're, I love that, right? They're good people. So once again, there is a righteousness to these people, like, but they're missing out, right? And
they're full of good works.
Yeah,
they're repressing other parts of them,
other joys of life that are not wrong, like dating an actor,
Hey, it's not that bad.
or another religious communities, right? That sort of are afraid of the arts, they're afraid of dance or theater or anything, that would be an outside influence and stuff. It is not good. You are impoverishing your community by not exposing them to the good things to the good things that are out there. Of course, not all art is edifying in any way, especially to someone of faith, but much of it is, including Babette's feast, right? So it's like that sort of idea of the secular and the religious. I love how Babette and the general and this community are combining it all. Like, again, righteousness and bliss kiss. That's such a beautiful statement, right? Of like you're combining things that are sacred with the pleasures of the world, and no one dies. In fact, something beautiful occurs, transformation.
And we're made in God's image. And you think, I think of Steve Bell's song, Why Do We Hunger for Beauty? You know, and we're just drawn to all those things because they're in the heart of God, and He wants us to experience that.
We yearn, yeah.
Our longing, which will ultimately lead us to heaven, right? Our true home. And I was thinking too of that song, I'll Be Home for Christmas, because my daughter often thought of that and cried when she wasn't home for Christmas. She lives in England, but
that's a tough one, huh? Like my mom hates that song because like her husband, my dad passed away when I was a teenager. So she, like, when that song comes on, it's so like, what are you trying to do to me? Like, that song comes on, what are you trying to do to me?
So many Christmas songs, secular and religious, have a melancholy to them.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? Some of the best ones.
It's true, huh?
You know, because it is a profound time. You know?
Well, and it was written in 1939 by two Jewish writers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that had come to the States
I didn't
and
know
had
that.
this, you know, land of freedom.
Wow. I didn't know that.
They wrote this, so it's very melancholic.
Yeah. And melancholy need not be negative, I guess, because it does remind us to grieve. We're not alone. Like we shouldn't all be chipper and just brush away our sorrows, right? Like, so there is something good about art that does that for us as well, right? Like not everything's always happy, filled with joy, like all the time, right? You know, such is life. Yeah. Well, any last, I'll give each of you an opportunity for last words to our listeners. Anything you want to leave them with about our beautiful topic, the art of hospitality?
I would say come and see Babette's Feast at the Gladstone in the first 2 weeks of November. We will set a place at the table for you.
Yes, indeed. You'll partake in the feast with us.
That's right.
Well, it was great having you, Adam.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
That's Adam Barrows. He's one of the actors in Babette's Feast of their production coming up in November at the Gladstone Theatre in Ottawa, Canada. Evelyn, any last words for you about the art of hospitality for our listeners?
Well, I think we should copy Babette's example of being lavish and showing love to our guests and opening up our homes. It's very, very important for people to feel that love and care and to make the place conducive to lots of deep conversations.
Well said. Deep conversations like this one. Thanks, Evelyn, and thanks, Adam. Thanks for joining.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
This has been Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series discussing the themes and ideas expressed in the story of Babette's Feast. You can listen again to this and all our podcasts through YouTube, Spotify, and directly on our website, ninthhour.ca. Be sure to follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter to be the first to receive exciting announcements, opportunities, and behind-the-scenes content. We hope you'll join us again on Telling the Story.